Masechet Nedarim, Daf Sadi Aleph, the final daf of the Masechet. Mishnah. Barishona hayu omerim shalosh nashim yoseot v'notelot ketubah. Haomeret temea ani lach. Shamayim beni lebencha u netula ani min hayehudim. At first, the halacha was that there are three categories of women who can leave the marriage, receive a divorce, and get paid their ketubah. If a woman says, I am defiled to you, I'm prohibited to you, the Gemara is going to demonstrate that this must be talking about a woman married to a Kohen who comes and claims that she was raped. Now, that's the halacha. Even if a woman, under duress, was raped, was with another man, she cannot remain married to a Kohen. This can't be talking about a Yisrael, a woman married to Yisrael, because if a woman married to Yisrael is raped, she can remain married. If, on the other hand, she willingly commits adultery, then she gets divorced, but she doesn't receive the ketubah. So in what case would she be entitled to leave the marriage, but also receive the ketubah? It's got to be that she is married to a Kohen. She did nothing wrong. She was under duress. She was raped. But she can't stay with him, so he has to divorce her, but pay her the ketubah. That's case number one. The second case, she comes and says, there is the space of heaven between me and my husband. A euphemism to mean, according to the Yerushalmi, it means that we had not have relations for a very long time, right? This distance between us, in terms of our intimacy, is like the size of heaven. So therefore, since he's never with me, that is grounds for divorce. He is obligated. He doesn't fulfill his obligation of ona. He has to divorce me and pay them my ketubah, and we would follow that. According to the Bavli, it's a little different. It says that they are having relations, but she claims that the husband is not fertile. He doesn't, the Gemara is going to use, shoot straight like an arrow, right? He's not able to make her conceive because he's too weak. And therefore, it will kind of, somewhat similar to the Yerushalmi. They are having physical intimacy, but she says, I want to have children, and he is not able to shoot with strength enough. So I want a divorce. That's a good claim, and she gets a divorce, and she receives a ketubah. The third one is, when she says, she makes a vow and says, I'm prohibited from everyone, from all Jews. And I think, as we said before, doesn't mean she's going to go marry a non-Jew. She's obviously not. She's prohibiting herself from ever being with any man. Well, why would she make a vow like that? Must be because relations is painful to her. Not because of her fault, because it's just that that's the way it is. It's painful to her, so she says, sorry, I can't be with you anymore. In fact, I can't be with anybody. It's not her fault that it's painful to her. She just can't be with her husband, so she also gets a divorce and deserves to receive her ketubah, because it's not because of any sin that she made. That was the original law. However, the rabbis then changed the law. The rabbis saw that the woman could, or maybe did, abuse this law, and they would have set their eyes on another guy and want to be with him. So they would want to leave their husband, but they would also want to pay their ketubah. So they might come and lie and say, Time'ani lach, if she's married to a Kohen, she might come and say to the Kohen, oh, I was raped. You have to divorce me and give me my ketubah. But maybe really she was not raped, and her intention was to collect her ketubah and go off and marry some other guy that she met. Therefore, she has to actually bring proof that she was violated in order to receive the ketubah. The second case, when she says, we have, according to Yerushalmi, we haven't had relations in a long time. There's so much distance between us. Again, we don't just say, fine, you can get divorced, but yasu derech bakasha, we make it as a request. The Yerushalmi says this means that we set up for them a romantic dinner, and we help them out and try to bring the couple back together. Right? We'll put in modern day terminology, we'd suggest a good therapist, we'd talk to them, we'd send them on a nice vacation together, and hopefully they can figure out their problem. according to the Bavli, is when she says, well, my husband is not fertile, we make a bakasha, we pray for the guy, right, and maybe he'll get better. So we try to ameliorate the situation one way or another. But it's not automatic grounds for saying you have to divorce, because, again, we suspect that maybe she is lying. ונטולה אני מן היהודים יפר לחלקו ותהא משמשתו ותהא נטולה מן היהודים. If he says, I'm removed from all Jews, I make a vow against all Jews, maybe because it's painful to her. Once again, we're not sure. We suspect that maybe she's making this claim because she wants to get her ketubah and run off with another guy. And therefore, we permit the husband to undo that part of the vow that will relate to him. So this husband and wife, they can continue to have relations, and the rest of her vow, she took it upon herself, will still apply, and she cannot be with anybody else. All right, so that's the early law and the later law in these three cases. All right, now we're going to ask some questions. According to this later law, that a woman comes and tells her husband, who is a kohen, listen, I was violated, and now I'm prohibited, and I was raped, and now I'm prohibited to you. And we said, okay, we don't believe her, you have to bring proof. Let's say she doesn't have proof, she doesn't bring proof. Can she continue to eat terumah? In other words, we're going to be machmir on her, right? But are we also going to be mekel, use this same law to be lenient, and so allow her to eat terumah, right? Or are you just not believing her because maybe she doesn't deserve the ketubah, so let her bring proof, because or do you really not believe her, and she can continue eating terumah? Remember, if she's a bat Yisrael, then she can only eat terumah while she is married to her husband. Afterwards, if he divorces her, then she cannot continue to eat terumah. So what's the answer? Rav Sheshet amar ochelet shelo tosi la'azal baneha. Rava amar ena ochelet efshad achla chulin. Machloket. Rav Sheshet says, let her eat terumah, because we don't want people to speak badly against her sons. If all of a sudden, she stops eating terumah, people are going to notice. They're going to say, oh, why is she not eating terumah? Oh, I know. It must be that she had relations with someone else. And therefore, who knows when it happened? If it happened before her children were born, then her children will be halalim. All right, she's not allowed to continue to be in this relationship, and any children she have will be halalim. So they're going to say she's not eating terumah. See, that's a prohibited relationship. Her children are halalim. We don't want people to say that, and therefore, more important that she eat terumah so that we don't ruin the reputation of the children. However, Rava says, no, she doesn't eat. She could eat chulin. What, does she only eat terumah all day long? Does she eat? Sometimes she eats chulin. Sometimes she eats terumah. So she'll eat chulin, and it won't be noticeable, and so we don't have to worry about what people will say about their children. All right, that's the machloket. Amar Rava, modeh Rav Sheshet im nit'armela she'ena ochelet midi hu ta'ama ela mishum tosi la'azal baneha nit'armela v'nitgadesha amrei hashtad de'it nisa. So Rava says, even Rav Sheshet, who said she can eat terumah because we're worried about the children, even he would agree that should she be widowed from him, she can no longer eat. Normally, if she's widowed but she has children from him, so she can continue eating terumah because she's still connected through the children. But here, once the husband dies, then that's it. She has to stop eating, because she did claim that she was raped, and so we're going to kick in that prohibition now. What's the only reason why we said that Rav Sheshet said she can? Because we don't want people to talk about her sons. Maybe sons she will continue to have in the future. But once she's widowed or divorced, so then if anyone sees that she's not eating terumah, they'll say, oh, whatever incident happened at the end of the marriage, and so that's why she's not continuing to eat terumah from now on. But because she's obviously not having any children with him anymore since he died, so then it will not affect the children. Okay, so next, Anamada Papa, Badik Lan Rava. Eshet kohen shene'ensa, yesh la ketubah or en la ketubah. This is very interesting because it gives us an insight to the educational methodology of the Amoraim. And so the Papa says Rava is a fourth generation Amora, the Papa is a student in the fifth generation. And so he said Rava would give us a test, right? This was his final at the end of the semester. And he would test us as follows. A woman married to a Kohen who was raped. Does she deserve her ketubah or does she not deserve her ketubah? And here's the two sides of the question. Kevan de ones legabe kohen kerason legabe Yisrael dameh and la ketubah. On the one hand, you could argue that she doesn't get her ketubah. Why? Because the equivalent case of rape for a kohen, that case is equivalent to a woman who willingly commits adultery to a Yisrael. The similarity is those are the two cases when the woman has to leave the marriage. Someone married to a Yisrael, if she commits adultery, she can no longer be with her husband, and she doesn't get a ketubah. So too, a woman married to a kohen, who even if she's raped, she has to leave the marriage. Maybe that should be equivalent, and she also shouldn't get her ketubah. That's on the one side. Or maybe the woman could say, listen, I am fit to be married. If I was married to Israel and I was raped, I would still be able to be married. Why can't we be married? Not through any of my fault. I didn't do anything wrong. The husband, it's his problem because he's a Kohen. So, therefore, we should apply a similar rule to someone whose field was flooded. If I buy a field, perfectly nice field, right? I pay full price for it, and then all of a sudden it's flooded, right? So if you don't get flood insurance, that's it. You're up the creek. And so that's his problem. It's the buyer's problem his field was flooded. It's too bad. It's a natural disaster. It's the same thing as here. The wife can tell her husband, the Kohen, says, listen, I'm perfectly fit. I did nothing wrong. This terrible thing happened to me that I was raped, and now I have to get divorced, right? That's bad enough, but the financial part, that's your problem, because you're a Kohen, you have to pay me anyway. So that was the test, and they had to debate these two sides and find a proof. And we told them, it's a Mishnah. And the Mishnah, our very Mishnah, when she says, I am defiled to you, she gets the ketubah. Our Mishnah taught that she does receive the ketubah. At least that was the original law. And therefore, yes, she is deserving of the ketubah. Okay, good. B'mai askinan. Let's explain this Mishnah. We already explained it when we read the Mishnah, but here's where the Gemara is explaining what we already said. If we're talking about a woman married to Israel and she willingly committed adultery, does she deserve a ketubah? No way. If she was married to Israel and she was raped, then does she become prohibited? No, she can remain married to Israel. Wasn't her fault. Rather, if she did it on purpose, she committed adultery on purpose, then she certainly does not deserve her ketubah. Is she going to be any worse than someone married to a Yisrael who commits adultery on purpose, who doesn't get a ketubah? So for sure, this Kohen, Eshet Kohen, is not going to deserve a ketubah. Rather, there must be someone married to a Kohen who is raped, and the Mishnah says she does get a ketubah, and that's the final answer to Rava's question. I presume that they got it right. Okay, now a related question. Gerashtani mahu. If a woman says to her husband, you already divorced me, all right? I don't know, she gives some date. Last year, you gave me a divorce paper. We're already divorced. That's her claim, and therefore she can go and she can go free and marry anyone she wants. But the husband denies it. Do we believe her? Amarav, when this is related, because in our Mishnah we talk about cases where she says, she claims, I was raped and so on, and she can, based on that, she can get a divorce. But here she says, I already was divorced. Do we believe her? Amarav hamnuna tashema. Ha'omedet temeh ani lecha, ta'afilu lemishnah acharona, teketani lo mehemna, hatamhu demishakera, tiyad'a deba'ala la yada ba. Aval gabe gerashtani deyada ba mehemna techazaka en isha me'iza paneha bifnei ba'ala. So Rav Hamnuna is going to derive the answer from our Mishnah. In our Mishnah, when a woman says, Eshet Kohen says, I was raped and I'm defiled to you, even according to the later law, in which we say she is not believed, only there is she not believed because maybe she's lying, and she may be lying because the husband doesn't know, right? If she was raped, the husband wasn't around at this alleged rape, and so we suspect that she might be lying because she wants to run off, collect a ketubah, run off with another guy. And so maybe she made up this rape in order to leave. And the husband doesn't know one way or another. He can't prove it or disprove it. He doesn't actually even know if it's true or not. But when she claims, you divorced me, the husband has to know. It's not possible she got divorced without him knowing. He would have had to get a get, have it written, and give it to her. So in that case, she is believed because we have a chazakah, we have a presumption. A woman would not be so brazen to outright lie in front of her husband when her husband knows that it's a complete lie. Usually, when people lie, they'll tell a lie to someone that doesn't know, is not sure if it's true or not. But most people don't lie to someone's face when that person knows for sure it's a lie, and certainly not a wife to her husband. We assume she has some respect, some fear, even though they are getting divorced, and she wants to get divorced, but nevertheless she's not going to lie outright when he knows it's not true. Therefore, Rav Hamnuna argues that we believe her. When a woman comes and says, you divorced me, we believe her and we consider her divorced. Amar le Rava, adraba, afilu lemishnah rishona dekatani mehemna, hata mishum dela avida lebezuye nafsha, aval hachad zimnin detakif la min gabra, me'iza u'me'iza. Rava says the opposite, even according to the first law of the Mishnah, where if Eshet Kohen says, I was defiled, we believe her. The only reason we believe her there is because a person would not demean herself, right? It's demeaning to come and say, listen, I was raped. I have to tell her that she has to give the details. This is difficult for her to say. So that's why we believe her. That's why I believe her. But in the case, if it's not true, if she's coming and saying, listen, I got a divorce, that's not a demeaning ordeal that she has to retell. And therefore, she's more likely to lie. Why would make her lie? Because sometimes it's hard for her under the authority of the man. I mean, the husband is too strong and he's too domineering, and she's like, I'm sick of this. I want out. And therefore, me'iza, she will be brazen and lie directly to his face because he's such a mean guy, and she just wants out. And so it doesn't it's not demeaning to her. She doesn't have to retell a demeaning ordeal. And therefore, Rava says, no, she should not be believed. We assume that a woman would lie about this. Okay, that's a fundamental machloket between Rav Hamnuna and Rava. And so now we're going to challenge. Mativ Rav Meshar Shaya. Hashamayim beni lebencha, temishnah rishona tiyuvta de Rava. This challenge is to Rava. From the case in our Mishnah that says, when the woman says, there's the space of heaven between us, right? You are not fertile, and therefore I want a divorce and a ketubah, where the original law is that she is believed. This will challenge Rava, because here there's nothing demeaning about her statement. She doesn't have to retell how she was raped. Actually, she's saying, listen, you have an infertility problem, my husband. And yet she's believed. So even though she doesn't need to retell anything negative about herself, still she is believed. And therefore, Rava, you should believe her when she says, you gave me a get, and even though she's not repeating anything demeaning, we should believe her. If she's believed in the case of the Mishnah, Habashamayim, we should believe her also. That's the challenge. And the answer is Kasaba Rabba, Hatam Kevan de la Sagila, Udela amar en yore kechetz, ila ita kedekamra, la amra le. So no, in that case of the heavens between us, she also, it's not enough for her just to claim it. She's going to have to explain, right? He does not shoot like an arrow. And how do I know? Well, she's going to have to go into detail of how she knows and what happens and what she feels. And so if it were not true, she would not say it. She's not going to go and speak about all these private, intimate things in front of the court unless it were true. So there also, there is demeaning experience to have to explain all these details, and therefore we believe her. And not so regarding a get. What is a get? Just says, I came, he gave me the get, and I collected it, and I went home. So since it's not demeaning, we suspect that she would lie. Okay, Hashamayim beni lebencha de Mishnah acharona tevet yubta de Rav Hamnuna. Now we're going to ask a challenge to Rav Hamnuna from the same case in the second half of the Mishnah, when she says, the space of the heavens between us, you are infertile, and according to the second law in the Mishnah, the second half, we do not believe her. So the question is, how come Rav Hamnuna, look, in that case you don't believe her when she says you're infertile, so how come you do believe her when she says you gave me a get? It should be the same as this case in our Mishnah. After all, here she knows and her husband also knows. We presume the husband knows whether he's fertile or not, whether he shoots like an arrow or not, and yet she is not believed. Therefore, this was your whole argument, Rav Hamnuna, that a woman would not brazenly lie to her husband. So if she does say something that her husband knows the truth about, then we believe her. That's why you believed her regarding a get. But here, the husband knows, and yet we do not believe her. How are you going to answer that, Rav Hamnuna? And the answer is, Kasaba Rav Hamnuna hachana mehi gufa amra nehi de bebi'a yada beyorekechetz miyada umshum hachi mishakera. No, truth is, the husband doesn't know. Here also, even if he knows whether they had relations or not, but whether he shoots like an arrow or not, that is something that she can feel, but he doesn't necessarily know. And that's the reason why in the Mishnah, she would lie, because he doesn't know whether it's true or not. But regarding giving a get, he definitely knows whether it's true or not, so a woman would not be so brazen to outright contradict her husband. Okay, and now we end the Masechet with a series of stories in which some of those halachot apply. There was a certain woman, every day that she had relations with her husband, she would wake up and bring water to wash her husband's hands. In other words, I guess she felt close to her husband after that, and she wanted to do something nice for him because she enjoyed that experience. Okay, very nice. So one morning, she comes and brings water right to his bed so he can wash his hands. And now he says, Amar la, hada mileta la vahidana. Now the husband is surprised. He says, we didn't have any relations today. How come you brought me water on a day that we did not have relations? Amra le, im ken had min nochrim, ahaloye dehavu hacha haidana, ant la dilma minehon. She says, I had relations with someone, and maybe it was from one of these Gentiles, these aloe merchants, right, who were just here, they were passing through. If it wasn't you, maybe it was one of them. I know I had relations with someone, and so now she is claiming basically that she committed adultery. Now, she didn't know who it was. I mean, according to her words here, right, she says, I thought it was you. Maybe it was dark in the middle of the night. I don't know. She didn't realize. Maybe she had a couple of drinks. But whatever the case is, it might have been by mistake. So let's assume that she's married to a Kohen, where even if it's a mistake, they still have to get divorced. So what's the law? Are we going to make them get divorced? Amar Rav Nachman, Eneha natana be'ached velet ba meshasha b'milad. Rav Nachman says, we don't believe her. Maybe she put her eye on another guy. She has in mind another guy, and she wants to claim that, she had mistaken relations with some aloe merchant. And that's why she brought the water to her husband, even though she knows she didn't have relations with her husband or with anybody, but she's bringing it in order to present the claim that, I was raped, or I had relations with someone else, and therefore he would divorce her, pay her ketubah, she could collect her ketubah and go marry and go run off with that guy. Therefore, we do not believe her. There is no credibility, even though she said so. And so this is an application of the second law of the Mishnah, that when a woman says, I am tameh to you, we do not believe her. All right, second story. Hayitata delava bedicha daate behade gavra. Amar la hayidana maishena. A certain married couple, presumably, usually she was in a happy mood, but one day she was not laughing. She was in a bad mood. She was unpleasant to her husband, and the husband says, "What's different today? What happened? Why are you angry at me? What did I do?" He says, never did you hurt me while we were having relations like you did today. And the husband says, we didn't have relations today, right? I'm sorry that you are in pain, but it wasn't me. We didn't even have relations. So she says, well, I had relations with someone and it was painful, and so maybe it was one of these oil merchants that was just here today. If it wasn't you, it must have been one of them. So same, it's a similar case, and Rav Nachman says the same thing. We don't have to pay attention to her. She may be trying to get a divorce, collect a ketuvah, and go with some other guy. That's why she's making up the story. But it could be that she just made up the story, and we do not have to believe her, and therefore they can remain married. Okay, these are very important sources, because all kinds of unfortunate cases do happen today, where there may be something that happened, and we don't want to break up a family. If we for sure know that something happened, then the couple would have to get divorced, and there's children and all that. So, based on these are very sensitive cases, obviously, but this would be one rationale to allow a couple to remain married, even if she comes and says that something happened. We can use these to say, we don't believe you, and if it makes sense, the couple can stay married. Okay, there was some adulterer who was in someone else's house and was secluded with the guy's wife. The homeowner entered the house while his wife and the adulterer are in the house. And the adulterer burst out of some palm branches, some bushes, and he ran away. Amar Rava, iteta sharia imatya ita de'abad isura irkuse hava mirkas. Rava said the wife is permitted to remain with her husband, because if they actually sinned and did a transgression, then he would have hidden himself. He would have been too embarrassed. It means that they were secluded, which is a prohibition of yichud, but you don't have to get divorced because of that. And so if he had actually committed adultery, then he would have hidden. But the fact that he ran away means he just wanted to get out of there. And even if he may be identified by running out, it means he didn't do anything that bad. So he doesn't care to be identified. He just wants to get out of the situation. Doesn't want the guy to beat him up. Okay. Similar story. So again, there was some adulterer that went to a house of a married woman, and the husband came home. And he hid. So the man, the adulterer, hid behind a door. Machtan tachle taman v'ta'imun chivya. Now there was some cress, right? An herb that was there in the house, and the snake had tasted of it. Now the adulterer saw this, but the husband didn't know that. And when a snake eats from something, then he may leave some venom there. So very dangerous. Now the husband saw this cress. He says, "Oh, this looks delicious." And he's about to eat it without the woman knowing, his wife knowing. I guess his wife probably also saw that there was the snake almost ate it. So, but the wife didn't see the husband about to eat it, so the wife didn't say anything. And then all of a sudden, the adulterer or alleged adulterer jumps out from behind the door and said, "Wait! Don't eat that. A snake ate it, tasted from it, and it may be poisonous." This is a real drama. It's like a soap opera. You can imagine this adulterer behind the door debating what to do. On the other hand, if he's quiet, and he'll save his own skin, but the husband will die. And now, he's going to feel guilty about that. On the other hand, if he goes and warns the husband will like, "Well, thank you for saving my life." On the other hand, "What are you even doing in my house? What, are you going to be with my wife?" Right? And then he'll come after him. So this is a real dilemma. And so the Noef made the right decision and revealed his identity and saved the husband's life. Now it comes to court, and what's the law? Do we presume that they actually committed adultery, and now the husband will have to divorce his wife? Amarava intete sharia im ite de'avad isura nichale delechol velemut dichtiv kinafu vedam bidehen. So Rava says the wife is permitted to remain with her husband, because if they actually transgressed, then the husband would be happy for the husband to eat, the adulterer rather would be happy for the husband to eat and die, because the pasuk says they committed adultery and blood is on their hands, which means that adultery leads to murder. Right? That's just the natural progression. If someone commits adultery with a woman, then her husband is going to be a threat to him, and he would be happy for the husband to die. So if they actually committed adultery, then the guy behind the door is like, "Oh, this is my lucky day. Now the husband will die, then I can marry his wife and no problem." And so the fact that he jumped out and revealed his identity and saved the husband's life means that he did not sin, and therefore they can remain married. Okay, now we ask about this Pishita. Rabba says, "Isn't that obvious? It's obvious logic. Why do you even have to tell us this story?" In fact, none of these cases are really very obvious. It's making a presumption of psychology and human behavior. I think one of the points of these stories is to show that when the rabbis, as sages, whenever they could, would try to save marriages when there was some doubt, and people make mistakes, and there's children involved and all that. And so if the rabbis deemed fit and there was some doubt, you see that they would try to find legal reasoning, a legal basis for a marriage to remain. I think that's the point of these stories, and that is also then related to the Mishnah and the difference between the early law and the later law, which is the later law may also be partially at least intended to save marriages that maybe broke down for a bit, but the rabbis saw have potential. Okay, Pishita, Ma'udetema isura avad, Vahidamar le denichale de la lemut baal, Tetevein tete lave, Maim genuvim mimtaku, Velechem setarim yin'am, Kam hashmalan. So our answer is no. What Rava said is not obvious, because I might have thought that they did in fact sin. And the fact that the adulterer jumped out from behind the door and saved the husband is because he does not want the husband to die, because he wants to take his wife upon him, meaning while he's alive. In other words, he wants to take his wife in sin. He actually likes committing adultery. He would not want the husband to die and then be permitted, because once something is permitted, it's less sweet than, it's less enjoyable than when it's prohibited. Right? There's a special excitement that comes from doing something that is prohibited precisely because he is violating a law. As the pasuk says, stolen waters are sweet, and bread eaten in secret, because the stolen is more pleasant, right? Sometimes the act of transgressing in and of itself is fun, right? Like if people rob a bank and get $1,000, that the fun of doing that, of being in danger and being an outlaw, can be more enjoyable than if someone actually just gave them a gift and legally gave them $1,000. And so therefore, we might have thought that this adulterer wants the husband to stay alive. Oh, I'm going to save your life so I can continue committing adultery with your wife. Therefore, Rava teaches that's not so. Really, people would not do that. And if they had committed adultery, then we would assume that the adulterer would have the husband die. The fact that he saved the husband's life shows that he did not commit adultery, and therefore the wife and the husband can remain married and live, hopefully, happily ever after, assuming that the adulterer never comes back and makes teshuvah. It's a good note to end this masechet on. Hadran alach ve'elu nedarim uselikala masechet nedarim chazakim uberuchim, to all who completed this important and fascinating masechet.